Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun,
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. I like you so much better now.
You like me so much better now.
Yeah, honestly, we spent years in conflict and it created some pretty big pain points for both of us.
Yeah.
And when we learned how to become safe inside of conversations, it brought down so many of my walls, and I like you so much more.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're less difficult to deal with.
I mean, we both are better versions of ourselves. We could have written a book on how to not do conflict.
But here's the deal. We didn't write a book on how to not do it. We created a course called Connected Conflicts on how
to do it.
Yeah. One of the things is that conflict, I was filled with anxiety when it came to conflict. And I think it was high stakes for you as well, right?
Yes, because we didn't learn a map of successful conflict. We never saw it done well. We didn't see it modeled. We didn't have the tools, a practical guide. And so we have actually laid out for you practical steps of exactly what to do to create more safety in conversations and to be able to create more repair so that when you have confidence and you know what to do, you show up differently.
Yeah. And one of the things is that through taking Connected Conflicts, this conflict course that we've created, you're able to develop language and you can create shared language between you and someone else. I think that was one of the hard things for us is like we were having conversations about things, but we weren't having the same conversation because we didn't understand a universal language. And once we developed a universal language, it actually began to be like, oh, this is so much easier. I'm not continually offended by the things you're saying because I know what they mean.
Yeah. So we want you to join us. Everybody has conflict conversations. Everyone goes through miscommunications, whether it's with your boss, your employees, your romantic partner, your parents, your kids. Like there is no way to avoid miscommunication. So we might as well get great at communication. And so you can watch us. We'll share how to add safety. We'll give you a practical guide of exactly what to do and steps to do. And then we'll have you watch us do a couple live conflicts so you can see what it looks like in real time. People love that.
They did. They were like, I think I'm getting some anxiety about this. And then they're like, oh, this went so well. Yeah. So anyways, if you guys want to get a hold of that new course, Connected Conflicts, you can go to Justin and Abby. That's abi.com/connected conflicts with an S. Without further ado, here's the episode.
I can honestly say that what we're about to talk about is probably the number one thing that changed our marriage.
Whoa, cliffhanger.
It's true. We're talking about a subject that we would not have made it
if we didn't participate in this in this way.
Yeah. And so I think today's going to be a really important episode, and I feel really excited about talking about it.
I can tell you're really excited.
Did I not look excited?
No. I'm really excited about this. It's going to be a really great episode, everybody. You're going to love it.
And this is why you got to watch the YouTube to see if I really looked that bad.
Watch the YouTube.
Yeah.
The YouTube. Okay, Grandma. What are the kids doing over there on the YouTube? Has anyone ridden the YouTube?
It's true. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I am very excited about this. This is a topic that I'm really passionate about. We're going to talk about coming face to face with yourself. And to give some background on what that is, where that comes from, I've dialogued quite a few different times about near-death experiences. It's something that I got drawn into watching a lot of near-death experience videos for quite a while now. And there's a couple things that happen for me inside of it. One, it just fosters a lot of hope. It's like, there's something beyond the craziness of this world that's right in front of us.
Yeah.
And you get to hear a lot of collective experiences from people from all different faith backgrounds, all kind of confirming certain beautiful aspects of what they have perceived eternity was to them, that they experienced. And one of the things that I'm all about finding the consistencies of something, like, oh, what is happening here that everyone's experiencing?
What are the patterns? Yeah.
And one of the things that is a very strong pattern is this idea of life reviews. So to kind of give an idea of life reviews, if no one's heard it, it's this idea where when people passed on to the other side, they found themselves in the presence of some unconditionally loving being that would spend time with them as they would sit down and go through the expanse of their own personal life.
Yeah.
Going back, revisiting memories or experiences that they had. And the way that they would revisit these was they would revisit it and see all different aspects of an experience that happened. So for a given instance, it wasn't just going back and seeing like, this is all the bad things I did in my life and now I'm going to be punished for it. It was unconditional love sitting there and saying, let's look at the ways that you participated with love and the places where you participated in opposition to love and the effects that it had on the world around you.
Yeah.
Right. And so a for instance story might be like, if I was in a life review, I might go back to a moment where I'm in your skin. I'm inside of you as we're in the middle of having a major fight.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm feeling
You're experiencing
I'm experiencing
what I experienced.
The pain, the suffering, the fear, the sadness, the shame. Like I'm understanding a condition of your story. Also, that applies to the beautiful moments where all of a sudden we're like, I didn't even know that this one moment with somebody left this type of impact on their lives. And there was a ripple effect to it and how it hit them. So to me, like when I hear of these, face-to-face encounters with ourselves, I find this to be such a powerful, thought-provoking idea.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. I think for me, I love this. When I grew up, I had a kind of similar concept, but it created a lot different emotions.
Right.
The idea was like you go to heaven and there's a big screen in front of every person who ever lived. And God goes through all of the things you did, the good and the bad on the screen and just shows it all. And then you get judged for what you did good and what you did bad.
Like people throw rocks at you and point fingers. Ah, shame.
Well, I don't know what I thought happened, but I was terrified of it. And I was terrified to make any mistakes. It felt like exposing and it felt so scary. And a few of the reasons I like the idea of a life review is one, everyone that I've heard in their near-death experience talk about it, there was an unconditionally loving source next to them. So they all said they didn't get swallowed up by shame or guilt or self-hatred or
condemnation.
Regret or condemnation. They actually could feel how they impacted people and they could feel like a sorrow or a sadness or, but it didn't overwhelm them.
Yeah, it didn't overtake them and destroy them.
Yes. And I think that was a key part that I never imagined in my concept. The other thing that I'm finding is that I don't think the goal of that is to judge, am I good or bad? I think the goal of that is to complete me more. That I am a more complete human when I understand humanity more, which means I'm letting go of that I'm good and other people are bad, or I'm bad and other people are good. Like when you start to see your life and how you've impacted people, it really opens up your need for forgiveness, your awareness of your need for forgiveness, and your awareness that if you need forgiveness, then other people also need forgiveness from you. It kind of creates this full circle feeling with humanity. Instead of being on a pedestal above looking down at people, it honestly looking at yourself and recognizing that you've hurt people the way that people hurt you starts to put you in understanding of the human condition.
Yeah.
And so I actually think it's like it actually heals something in us. I actually think it breaks judgment out of us. So in my version as a kid was like, I'm about to be judged in front of all of the earth on a big screen. And now when I think about a life review, it feels much more like I'm going to go through this process of seeing my life more holistically. And when I see my life more holistically with unconditional love there, I'm going to have to give up judgment of myself and judgment of others. And so much of the way I so much of, let's talk about our dynamic.
Well, I want to say this first.
Okay.
To me, it's a crash course in humility.
Yes.
Right. And whether that's in an eternal space where we participate in that, or it's here on earth. But I think that humility is, it's like it's the currency of heaven to me. It's a currency of eternity. It's a currency of love. It's this humility.
Yes.
And so there's this crash course in humility when you come face to face with yourself. And again, you made mention of it. It brings you into a deeper understanding of the human condition and the human experience.
Yeah.
And what it does is it opens up the door for a greater depth of love to be formed inside of us as we see ourselves honestly.
Yes.
And we see the impact of our decisions honestly. We get to go, oh, I'm not better than anyone else. And in order for me to not get swallowed alive in self-condemnation over this, I have to actually yield to self-forgiveness. I have to yield to, love.
Yeah. And for me, I have to yield to an unconditionally loving source. That to me becomes this great need. If I am having to face myself, then I'm going to want God there with me.
Yeah.
Not against me, like God there with me.
Yeah.
To hold my hand through it all.
Yeah. If you don't have an unconditionally loving source sitting next to you in that type of experience, whether it's here on earth or in eternity, I think that you are bound to condemnation, because in our disconnection from unconditional love, we are bound to judgment. Yeah. And so if we start actually
judging ourselves,
looking honestly at ourselves without that love, we go into a judgment that perpetuates a condemnation. And again, that's why people flee from actually being connected to the reality of their behavior and the impact it has, because we suddenly have shame that starts encroaching on us and overtaking us. And we can't stand the weight of that.
So really, when we're talking about facing ourselves, we're talking about becoming aware of our impact, good and bad. Like becoming aware of how we impact the people around us. And I think it's beautiful when we get to become aware of how we've positively impacted people. And I think it's hard when we become aware of how we've negatively impacted people. And this is why I think it has changed so much in our marriage, is because I wanted to, for years, blame you for all the things you did that really hurt me. And I can. And you can, vice versa. We both did things in our marriage that really hurt the other person. And it is so easy to have that finger pointed at, you're the reason we're in this cycle. You did this. That's why I did this, And so that idea of, what if one day I'm in your shoes and I feel what it was like to be you? That empathy, the desire for us humans to learn empathy, I think is one of the greatest lessons we can learn. And so when I have to actually look at, what could I be doing that is making it unsafe for him? What could I be doing that is adding to our fire? How am I actually showing up? That is so painful, because it feels so much better to villainize the people around us. It feels so much better to be like, no, you're bad and you're bad and you're bad. And when people hurt us, it feels good to judge them.
Yeah.
Because that's like a way that I can push their hurt away. Like if somebody judges me, I'll just judge them back. Yeah.
Then I can tell myself that what they have to say doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because I've eradicated an aspect of them as a human being in my judgment.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't matter. I'll eradicate you. You're a horrible person.
Yeah.
Okay, now this doesn't impact
now it doesn't
me.
impact me that you said
Mhm.
I wasn't good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so the more I've had to face myself, what that has looked like for me is becoming honest with my patterns, my behaviors, my shortcomings, and feedback. The truth is, a lot of people will give you a lot of feedback and we dismiss a lot of it. And we want to talk ourselves out of most of it. And most of the time, people may not give feedback 100% accurately, like they may not understand your intentions, but there are some things that you might consistently hear. And those might be things worth digging into about yourself and might be worth starting to look at. And so for me, facing myself began to be the process of what have I brought to relationships that has caused pain? Well, I had to let go of the idea that it was possible to not cause pain. Like I really believed as a human, if you're good enough at being a human, you won't hurt people. And I really believed that my intentions were good. So even if my intentions were good, there's no way that I was hurting you. You were the one hurting me. And so the concept of having to face myself had to start being like, oh, I actually come off edgy. Oh, I actually sound condescending when I'm confused. Oh, I actually get dysregulated because when this and this thing happened. Oh, I actually have had emotions that felt out of control and I blamed you for it. Like one of the ways I've started facing myself is whenever I start to judge somebody for a behavior, I immediately go, how are they mirroring to me something that I do? So when somebody is doing something that really annoys me, maybe they're like gossiping about somebody negatively. And I'm like, oh, I hate that. Then I'm like, okay, where do I talk negatively about other people? Where do I like whatever I'm feeling that edge? So like recently there's a person in my life that the way they handle their emotions just feels like they just shotgun people around them with their emotions. They blame everyone and don't take ownership for why they're feeling what they're feeling and their behavior. They don't take any ownership for their behavior. That makes me angry and I feel angry about it. And so what facing myself looks like is, where have I done that in my own story? And now I have to apologize to you because I'm like, oh, actually, when we got married, my emotions were really out of control and I blamed you a lot. And that this deep feeling where I feel unsafe around this person, that must be what you felt around me. And that does not feel good. And so I'm sorry. That's what facing myself has looked like for me.
Yeah. Coming face to face with yourself, I think I get to either do it here or I get to do it in eternity. If I do it here, I actually get to engage the humility process and I get to reap the fruit of what it produces.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that there are people, I think my grandfather is a good example. It took a really long time for him to be willing to come face to face with himself. It was closer to his deathbed. At least on the outside, it looked like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this life that I feel like he missed out on. This life of connection with people, this life of vulnerability, this life of joy
Mm-hmm.
that he missed, right? And it doesn't make him bad. It just means like there was a reward to be had here and a reward to be reaped on the other side had he engaged it. Because I believe that when we engage the process of coming face to face with ourselves, what it will do is it will produce love inside of us. It will bring about repair
Mm-hmm.
and love. And then the impact of love will be left inside of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to reap of that fruit eternally, because that's the one thing that we get to take with us, right?
Is the love that
we deposited
Mm-hmm.
inside of others' lives and the impact that it had.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, when I look at this idea, I know that it feels excruciating right now. Like it feels like hell for me to sit down and look honestly at the ways that I have hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only the bad side of stuff, it's the good side of stuff as well, coming
Sure.
face to face with the beauty that we bring. But for 1 second, we're just talking about like the places that we participate out of fear
Mm-hmm.
and the chaos that that brings.
Mm-hmm.
When I have to look at that now, if I'm not looking at it present with God's love, like I'd said earlier, it feels really terrible. It hurts. It hurts. There's a grief. We have to be willing to feel grief, because when we act outside of the bounds of the nature of love, we do something that produces grief, right? So not only do I have to maybe feel shame that I've been running from, but I have to feel a sense of grief and impact here and now, not just later, but I'm sitting here and now on earth going like, oh man, for years, Abby and I got into it and I would blow up and I would yell and scream and this hurt her in these ways. And I have to, as I put myself in those shoes and face the ways that I participated, an ache happens. And we're oftentimes very adverse
To feeling the ache.
to feeling that ache. And when I'm, you talked about when you get frustrated at different people and stuff like that. That's something I do as well now. When I'm getting really angry at somebody's behavior patterns, I'm like, where is it that I've done this in my life? And where is it that I've held judgment towards myself? And where is it that I haven't forgiven myself for this?
Yeah.
Because if I actually forgive myself for these behaviors, my judgment dies towards other people, because I then enter into connecting to the reality of my humanity. And then I can see them for the reality of their humanity. I can humanize them rather than dehumanize them. And then I can suddenly enter into empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
And I can say, I walked a mile in your shoes now, as I'm present with walking a mile in my own shoes.
Yeah.
Conceptually.
Well, and this is the interesting thing about judgment is it's like a noose that I make for somebody else that ends up hanging myself.
Yeah.
It is, judgment is a weapon that ends up destroying our own being. Eventually, we end up doing the very thing that we've judged others for.
Yeah.
And so when we get the chance to, when we're annoyed by someone and we're judging them, that is a great opportunity. I like to call it like mirroring. They are there to show me something about me.
Yeah.
So one of the people that's impacted my life the most is the person that I judged the most. Like I spent a few years battling over and over and over again with judging this person because the way that they lived felt so judgy for me. I felt so unsafe with so many things. And what it was a constant mirror. Where do I do this behavior?
Yeah.
Where am I the same as them? Where am I doing the same roots of this? Oh, they might do control this way. I might not be controlling in the same way as them, but I might use control over here in this way. Like it's looking at, because a lot of us, I think, look at people that are like, well, I would never do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you got to look at what the root of the issue is. So like this person might be controlling and I may not be controlling with my atmosphere, but I might be controlling in my need for people to be safe. Or I may not, this person might get aggressive with people and maybe I try not to be aggressive with people, but I still come off aggressive even when I'm just being confused. Like there's a lot of different ways that I'll look at somebody and I'll be like, oh, it feels like you're just being impulsive. Oh, well, I might not be as impulsive with major life decisions, but I'm impulsive with texting or impulsive with these emotions and what I do with them here, or how I show my emotions with Justin. Or so I'm constantly finding that it may not look exactly the same as somebody else, but I do that all the time with politics. When I start to get judgy about the other side, I'm like, they are meant to be a mirror to me. They're scared. I'm scared. Oh, they want this country to be safe. Oh, I want this country to be safe. So it's that constant looking at the thing we're judging and then being like, they'll do these crazy things to protect what they think is right. Oh, I've been willing to do crazy things to protect what I think is right. It's that constant seeing how we are the same.
One of the things that happens is when we're not looking honestly at ourselves and we're engaging judgment, we end up creating this how do I put it? It's like I forgot what I was going to say about it. Honestly, I lost it there. I was like, I had a good point.
It's a very cute point. You're very cute at
And
making points.
it's gone.
Yeah. What are some of the things that have helped you face yourself?
Well, I think forgiveness has been vital to my process.
Yeah.
I think that when I look back at a lot of people, even in my office, that spend a lot of one-on-one time with me, forgiveness felt like very self-forgiveness was a thing that people were very violently against.
Yeah.
I can't forgive myself for this. And you can't look honestly at yourself outside of the bounds of forgiveness and the grace that forgiveness produces.
Yeah.
Right. And so
those who've been forgiven much can forgive much.
Yeah. And so there's this sense of like, the more that I got closer with forgiveness as almost like a friend, like, no, I forgive and I accept that I'm messy and I'm human. And that was the other component. My ability to look at myself was within the bounds of acceptance. I accepted that there's not a perfection place that I'm ever going to hit.
Yeah.
I accepted that I'm going to really hurt people. That's going to be part, no matter
even if you don't mean to.
Even if I don't mean to, no matter how loving I am, that like I'm going to hurt people. I accept that people are going to misunderstand me. And knowing that, I can look internally and be like, they may never understand this. They may not understand these parts about me, but I can have a sense of personal understanding. I was talking to my therapist the other day. She's a wonderful lady. And she's coined this phrase, inner standing instead of understanding. And I like that. That's a really good phrase from her. Shout out to Judy. But there's a sense of like, the more that we get into an inner standing of our condition, it's easier to look at stuff because like, I'm like, as I forgive myself, I let go of judgment and I go, I just want to have this inner standing. Like, what's really happening inside of me? I'm wanting to have an understanding of my story, right? And that's helped me. The more I get connected to my story and the impact that my history had on me, the more I can sit down with the messiness that I've perpetuated and be like, yeah, of course I've done these things. Of course I have these reactions and responses. Of course I trigger in these ways. I have a history that has a lot of programming inside of it that has a lot of need for love to heal the fear that came in here, to heal the broken belief systems that came in here.
Yeah.
And so that's been pretty vital for me too.
I think for me to face myself, I've had to start to have acceptance of the human condition.
Yeah.
I think I had unrealistic expectations of what it meant to be a good friend, of what it meant to be a good person, of what it meant to be a good daughter, of what it meant to be a good, like I just believed that it was possible to do everything right. That belief caused me more pain than any of my failures because it made every failure excruciating.
Yeah.
And now I've exchanged that belief for we are all humans and we're all doing the best that we can to protect ourselves. And the more we understand even like how our nervous systems and our brain works automatically to try to protect us from pain, there's so many ways that it makes sense why I do things the way that I do. And so I've come to acceptance of like, but that means I also accept other people in their human state when I'm like, oh, sometimes I have feelings that are really big and hard for me to hold. And, oh, look at them. They're having feelings that are really big and hard for them to hold. I know what that's like. I can have compassion on them. Now, instead of judging them and deciding they're really bad for that, I can say, man, I need forgiveness when that happens inside of me. And I want to give forgiveness when I see that happening inside of them.
Yeah. One of the things that has helped me to look at myself is realizing that holding on to my judgment and my shame has perpetuated hell that I'm living inside of. So I want to look at myself, because the more that I come face to face with myself, the more I actually dismantle the hell that I'm living in,
The judgment.
and the
Mhm.
shame that comes with it, and the fears that are
Mhm.
around it. Because when you get truth on the table, where you get honest about like the reality of your condition, your expression, your actions,
Oh, yeah.
all of a sudden it's like, this thing isn't hidden anymore.
Yeah.
Sitting in a shadow, just eating away at my soul.
Yes.
It's just like, it is what it is. And now that I can accept it, I can like feel the relief from it, feel
Mhm.
the relief from the shame and the guilt and the condemnation.
I will say it's hard though. In facing, I don't think there's ever been a journey that cost me more than facing myself.
Yeah.
I think denial costs you a lot though too. I think that
Yeah,
For a
you're not
long ti-
aware of it
for a
necessarily.
long time I lived in denial and it felt better, but it hurt. It created results that continually hurt me more. So facing myself has felt harder, but the results have created better fruit in my life.
Yeah.
Like people are much more tender-hearted towards somebody who's owning how they impact people
Yeah.
than they are towards somebody who's living in denial of how they impact
Yeah.
people.
There's a lot more grace. I know that there's an individual that I'm trying to figure out how to communicate well about this. There's an individual that has very strong denial, that in their denial, they continually leave a really painful impact.
Yeah.
In our exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, but you don't understand. If you would just say like, I know I'm broken in these ways, and these are the things that are messy about me and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the tender vulnerability and humility of that causes an extension of grace. And I'm like, if you only understood, my grace would abound inside of that acknowledgement. Because I'd be like, oh, that I don't have to fight you on this.
But this is where our categories in our mind play such a big part of our problems. So if you have a good category and a bad category,
right,
and you've said in your head, you're bad if you do these behaviors, then you can't acknowledge to the world that you did those behaviors. You can't say, because then that means you're in the bad category. And the reason why facing yourself can be extraordinary is it can help you break out of that black and white thinking, good or bad, that everything is just black or white. But and this is what the pain has been for me, is maybe I look at wives who have out of control emotions and just blame their husbands. And I want to be like, that's bad. That's dumb. That's not healthy. And then I realize that I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to be like, oh, that means I'm bad and I'm done and I'm unhealthy. And so that torment from our own judgment. And that is where facing myself has been like, what boxes do I need to let go of what is unlovable and what is unworthy and what is too bad? How do I let go of that box so that now I can own that behavior?
Yeah.
If I say, oh, actually, it's pretty normal for me to want to blame. When I feel like somebody's blaming me, I do want to blame back. That's very normal. Of course, people want to blame. That doesn't mean that they're immature. That doesn't mean that they're bad. That means they have a gut response to protect themselves. So do I.
Yeah. I've had to, like, I was talking to our class, our LCMC class the other day, and I was like, if you guys knew the craziness that went on inside of this head sometimes, you probably wouldn't want to follow me. And I was being playful about it, right? But I was having the discussion about like, I am constantly still messy with judgments inside of my head and categorizing that I'm constantly working on, like letting go of. And I haven't arrived. I don't know if I ever will arrive. I think that there's a progressive allowing love to impact you and asking, like for me, I've had to say, God, how do you see this person? And how do you see me? How do you see this circumstance? Because in my humanity, I can't see outside of this box of judgment on this situation. And that's something that's ever working inside of me. But if I'm not allowing that work to happen, if I'm not deliberately like inviting that work, then I just sit and stew in it. And ultimately, what my point is I was just like, you guys aren't going to just arrive there, but and you have to accept that. Like, it's a progressive journey we're all on. No, I'm not better than you. Yep. I haven't gotten to that place where I've got it all worked out. And I don't think that I think that we progressively learn in our maturity how to manage it better, how to manage how we communicate about our judgments. And I think that through time, we begin to tenderize as we encounter love, and compassion does start to overflow.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this comes down to both of our frames is one of the reasons we're on earth is to learn humility and to learn to break up with judgment.
Yeah.
And so anytime that we start judging people, that's an opportunity for us to release more judgment. Anytime that we face ourselves more, that's an opportunity for us to push judgment out and invite compassion and humility in. And so it feels like a productive process to face ourselves because it's getting us towards our goal. And I think both of us have a goal of learning humility, love, and all of those things can only like Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the tree of judgment. All of a sudden, after they ate from the tree, they now could judge that it was bad that they were naked. Before then, they weren't judging. Am I good or am I bad? Am I naked or am I not? They weren't judging themselves. And God never intended for us to judge ourselves because we're bad judges. We don't even have all the information. We don't even have how our genetics impact us or how past traumas impact us or how our psychology, like we don't even understand all of the reasons why we do what we do. So we're horrible judges of ourselves and others. And, I love, that's one of the things I love the most about the Shack is the concept of taking ourselves off the judgment seat, deciding that we actually were not meant to be the judge and letting go of our belief that we would make a good judge and allowing God to come in and him to be a better judge than us.
And I think that because I can hear somebody having a conversation being like, but confused about what even the word judgment means. Yeah. I think that when we're having a conversation about judgment, at least on my side, it's about assigning first value or worth to another human being based on their actions. Like
they're a good human or they're a bad human.
Yeah, they're worthy of love or they're not worthy of love. I think that we can look at actions and we can say, I know that this action is destructive.
And I don't want to be near it.
And I don't want to be near it. I don't want to participate in this destructive behavior because it stands in opposition to the nature of love, patience, and gentleness and kindness. And we can critique actions and say, I know that this is not beneficial.
Yeah.
But the conversation around judgment is looking at someone and perceiving that we are either better than them or less than them. Yep. And this is a conversation about like, you cannot add worth to yourself nor take worth away. Yep. You have intrinsic value and every other person has intrinsic value.
We're all children of God.
In their fear, they may come into a deep agreement with destructive behavior that causes ache and pain, and those deeds need to be addressed. Yeah. Those deeds need to be stopped. Those deeds stand in opposition to the nature of heaven, the nature of God's heart, and that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, yeah. And I confront people on their behavior all the time.
And part of coming face to face with yourself is letting go of judgment on whether or not I have personal value, and then coming into a reality check of my decisions, my deeds, my actions, and the truth of whether or not they align with love or they align with fear.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just wanted to speak to that because I know that like if someone's listening, they're like, no, but people they're doing terrible things. They're killing people and stuff. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And that needs to be stopped. That needs to be reconciled. That needs to be dealt with. And they're still a human. And at the core of their essence, they're a child of God who has been lost inside of their relationship with fear and judgment and hatred and separation inside of themselves as they felt separated from God and people. And that needs to be redeemed. And that's what love does. That's what an unconditionally loving creator does is he comes in and he says, hey, I'm here to redeem the destructive nature that you've participated with. I'm here to draw you back into connection with me, to heal this condition of your heart that's perpetuating this destruction. And it's through my forgiveness, your acceptance of it, and your forgiving of yourself that will repair this condition of the human experience that feels so broken. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I just wanted to say that.
That's good. That's
Do you have
really
anything
good.
else on that?
What are ways that you've seen me face myself? And how has that impacted you?
You just want a pat on the back, huh? Well, look at Abby here. No.
And how has that impacted our marriage, and how has that impacted our relationship?
Let me back up. Both of us have been unwilling to face ourselves historically in many areas.
Yeah.
The denial of our behavior and the denial of the effect of it caused a lot of pain and suffering.
Yeah.
It perpetuated disconnection. It perpetuated grief. I have watched over the last 4 years, you progressively in some pretty monumental ways come to me and say, hey, things like, I realize that I've partnered with blame. I realize that I've partnered with accusation. I can see that this would just destroy your heart. That would be so painful to experience. I put things on you that weren't yours to carry, yours to fix, yours to heal, yours to, own. And the impact of that is that I felt places in my heart where I had unconscious walls up. I could feel walls start falling down. Self-protective walls could come down because I'm not trying to protect myself from these actions anymore. Because as you see it and own it, you begin to create a world of safety. Because I'm like, oh, this person isn't going to deny reality in this area. Well, they may, but they're stepping out of that.
Of the denial.
They're progressively moving out of denial and denying a reality of what's happening, which means that they want to genuinely repair what's been broken here and not continue this behavior. So I don't know. Does that kind of answer your question?
Well, how has that impacted our marriage?
I mean, it's created a whole lot more intimacy. It's brought about healing. It's caused me to feel safe. So it's caused the love to increase.
Yeah.
It's created a lot more stability inside of the marriage. It's also left me feeling like I don't have to fight to be seen. Like as you've chosen to want to face yourself, there's things where maybe I would have fought to be like, I need to like show her all these ways that she's hurting me and affecting me. And there's a lot less of that for me where I'm like, you know what? She's willing to look at herself. I'm sure she's going to go contemplate this and look at this.
Yeah.
I don't have to come knocking down the door on this.
Yeah.
Oh, what about the same question reversed?
Which one? I asked you like 4.
Well, you said you asked about like where areas that that you've noticed I've faced myself.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of ego strength to be able to look at ourselves and the hurt that we've caused. And for you, there was a lot of recognizing that the pain you experienced in childhood, you then perpetrated in our marriage. And I think that it took a lot of bravery to start to see your impact. And because we've both begun to look at how are we impacting each other.
Yeah.
Now we're able to like go back through our story where we had a lot of wars over different parts of our story where I'd be like, you did this, and you'd be like, you were doing this. And it felt so like we were battling over who was right and who was wrong about how it happened. Now it feels so much more like I see that I had good intentions and you had good intentions, and we both had fear and self-protection. And I thought I was loving you really well, and there were all these ways that I was also stabbing you accidentally, and you thought you were loving me really well, and all these ways that you were stabbing me accidentally. And so I think it's enabled us to be able to have more nuanced conversations about our story, because in the past it would be like, you'd be like, well, you were a needy person. And I'd be like, yes, but your behavior was something that helped create that. And when you couldn't acknowledge your impact, then you couldn't acknowledge that the thing that hurt you from me was also partially because of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of behaviors that you didn't like in me that were results from what you were doing.
Yeah.
And vice versa. There's a lot of things in me that created the results I didn't want. But the ability to start to look at how we've impacted each other has made it so we can go back through our history. And now when I can say like, I think like I felt really judged. I felt like you thought that I was just bad because of this, but can you see how your behavior influenced me? And you can now say yes, because you actually are owning how your behavior has impacted me. It enables so much reconciliation, and it enables so many conversations where we can feel seen and heard and understood. And it makes it so that we can feel connected and close and hopeful. And one of the things
I want to add something to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I've noticed that like when we do a cleanup, say we have a disconnect, a fight, even when we're doing a cleanup, when we're both collectively facing ourselves, it's caused these circumstances where like, oh, I can sit and just own me, because I'm not going to be holding a hot potato of blame any longer. Because she's going to go, oh, I want to own me too, because I'm facing myself.
Yeah.
And so back and forth, I watch progressively us getting really good at the ownership in cleanup conversations. And it's not the walls of self-protection, because we're like, oh, we're creating history of knowing that we'll own our side of the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels really good. And one of the things I'm thinking that really helped both of us in this area, I think, because a lot of times when we talk about facing ourselves, people can get too introspective and take on all the blame.
Yeah.
I think this is why people don't want to face themselves, because they're like, if all of it's my fault, that's too much.
Yeah.
And the boundary for us in facing ourselves was, I know that every relationship is co-creating dynamics.
Yes. I was going to bring this up actually.
And so the only way for me to face what my behavior, how is my behavior impacting this relationship, while holding that it is not the only thing impacting the relationship. I firmly believe two people are involved in every relational dynamic, unless there's more people, and then more people are involved in it. But so when I look at like, I can own, hey, I had a lot of really big emotions and I was very dysregulated when we got married, and I didn't know how to regulate. And it was like a machine gun, like they'd explode in any direction, and they exploded at you and things got turned on you, and that sucks. And I don't think that it was me that did that caused you to have rage. I think that you had your own rage and your own fear issues and your own triggers from before me that is part of how you chose into responding, and like in a beautiful world, both of us would have been safe and would have interacted with safety.
Yeah. Well, one of the key words in all of this is nuance, right? And let me see how to put this. When we, as humans, operate out of black and white thinking, it's really impossible almost to take ownership, because as you said earlier, all of a sudden we take on the blame, or they have to, like one of the two of us has to hold the blame.
The whole blame.
And that's crushing. And that can't be done in black and white thinking.
Yep.
Nuance is so necessary for us to be able to say, like, I played this role, they played that role, we both played a role inside of this, and we co-created this. And I think that the word co-create, like you brought up, I think it was Barry that introduced, our counselor Barry, that introduced co-creating, if I remember right. But when he was like, yes, what did you co-create in that relationship? I'm like, you mean I can take part of the ownership of this and she can too?
Yeah.
And I think that was like 5 years ago or something like that when I really connected to the co-creative thing. But again, it's a necessary part of it if you're going to do it.
A story that dramatically impacted my life is I had gotten into a conversation with somebody that didn't go well. It was one of my closest friends and it was really messy.
Yeah.
And so I knew I need to go take ownership for my part in this. But my counselor was like, also though, because I was good at falling on the sword back then, and I'd be like, I ruined everything. I created. She's like, let's talk through all of the dynamics that person brought to the table that created that conversation. And so I was able to see, they brought something and I brought something.
Yeah.
And I remember apologizing for the first time, saying, I'm really sorry for this, this, and this. I know that we co-created the dynamic, so I can't take ownership for everything that happened, but I can take ownership for my part. And this was my part. And even just saying out loud that boundary of, it wasn't all my fault, but this was my fault. Like, there was things that you brought to the table too, but I can only take ownership for my piece. Yeah. Something about just being able to say that created a lot of safety within me, because it was inside of myself saying, hey, I'm not going to villainize you, baby girl. You aren't the only bad one. You're not bad. She's not bad. You both had an interaction where you both were scared and you both interacted with your protectors. And so you take ownership for your interaction with your protectors, and you hold space that she actually had her own behavior as well. Hold that there are two pieces to the pie, but fully own your piece.
Yeah.
And that moment began the journey for me to start to see that I can take ownership with nuance. I can take ownership while still holding space that other people are a part of the journey as well.
Well, a key thing that you use the word villainizing, right?
Yeah.
And when we're talking about facing yourself, it's not about villainizing yourself.
Yes.
It's about looking honestly at your participation.
Yeah.
That's it. How have I participated in this? The good and the bad and the ugly, so to say, like the whole scope of things. How am I participating in it? And again, like, I know we got to wrap this up, but it's a really liberating feeling the more that we do it. It just, like, I
got to tell you, it's like pure relief.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of crack cocaine. It's horrible. It's like, there's a moment, it feels kind of like popping pimples. Is the relief that you feel?
Yeah. Crack cocaine and popping pimples.
It hurts for a second and then you feel so much better. Like, when I'm about to own something new, I often start with Pizzi. We just have confessional conversations.
Yeah.
And it'll be like, hey, I'm realizing that I do this thing.
Yeah.
I get defensive instead of being open and soft. I get defensive and I put up a wall. And it'll be like so hard to say. It's so hard to say out loud. It's so hard to just take ownership. And then you feel this relief because it feels like you're in alignment with what is real, with what is true. It's the opposite of gaslighting, that feeling of like, no, this is real and true. I do get defensive. I'm not living in any denial. And when we live in truth, that is it's like getting a chiropractic adjustment where all of a sudden you feel aligned. There's like a feeling of relief that comes when we acknowledge our behavior.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the last things I want to leave this off with is, well, now I forgot that too. Something about facing yourself. Knowing, do you have anything to fill the space there?
Sorry.
What is it? I had a whole thing about facing yourself.
Well, I will acknowledge that my ADD interruptions sometimes have made it so you would lose your train of thought.
Yeah. Oh, I know what it is. I got it. Thanks for filling the space.
You're welcome.
A lot of people, like, when you realize that there's a point in time where we all have to face ourselves, it actually helps us to forgive people in a whole different way, because I'm actually, and it also causes me to let go of a lot of resentment and bitterness and stuff. Not because I'm like, you'll get yours one day, but I'm like,
you'll know how I felt one day.
Yeah. Like this will make sense at some point inside of your journey. You may not have the capacity in this moment to actually see the impact of your decision making on this. And so I'm going to release and accept that whether I see it here or not, like, you'll know the engagement of this. And that's been freeing to me. That's helped me progressively be like, I don't have to fight to be heard. I don't have to fight to get this person to understand me.
Oh, this has brought me so much comfort, my soul, because I think that's the number one thing we want after someone's hurt us is we want them to understand how they impacted us. We want them to see how they hurt us, to feel what it feels like. And so when I start to visualize, oh, there's going to be a time when someone else, when the people who really devastated me actually feel the impact they had on me, and they are in my shoes and they get to see what it was like from my side, the ability to know that that's coming brings peace to my being. And it helps me let go of trying to be understood, of trying to be known, of trying to get them to see my side.
That's also where all of a sudden there's not a need for punishment in my head, because I'm like, I don't need you to be punished. Like, the weight of the grief that you may have to carry as you understand, especially if a person's perpetually unrepentant and perpetuating destructive measures throughout their life that just keeps going and going. I'm like, yeah, that needs to be stopped. There needs to be accountability for that. And I wouldn't want to have to carry the weight of that. It almost creates a sense of compassion and empathy of like, oh,
one day you're going to have to feel
how
you impacted people.
You can't get away from that. And then there's a release. There's a progressive release, I think. And I think that's helpful.
And I think that's a beautiful form of justice that we're all wanting. We want the people who've really destroyed us to feel how much pain it cost us. And the idea of that life review is not only would they see how that moment impacted you, they'd see how that moment impacted your entire life. So you have somebody that abused you when you're 3, and knowing that there will be a time where they actually have to feel what it was like to be in your shoes and experience that abuse and how that rippled throughout your entire life. That is a heavy grief.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so beautiful to have a Savior who loves to forgive.
Yeah.
Who's rich in forgiveness for us and for others, who is willing to go to that place of deep grief with us and allow us. You know, one of my friends talks about how the only way to become less dissociated, like when we are hurting people, to keep doing it, we have to dissociate from our humanity.
Yeah.
We have to separate from ourselves. And so the way to get back to being human is to allow ourselves to feel the impact of how we've affected others.
Yeah.
And that entry, again, now it becomes this beautiful system that is meant to bring healing and redemption in full circle. So I get to be fully understood by you for all the ways that you impacted me, and you'll get to be fully understood by me for all the ways that I impacted you. And it's this beautiful full circle where we begin to lay down our swords
Yeah.
and we begin to cling to the love of an unconditional savior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it feels so redemptive to me.
Yeah. I think it's a really good conversation. Agree or disagree with us, that's fine.
Mhm.
But like when I've allowed myself to contemplate this reality, it's changed the course of how I've approached life
Mhm.
and how I approach people. And it's progressively something that, you talked about, like, we'll have to feel the weight of how we participated. Like, I keep going, like, where are the places that I'm lying to myself
Mhm.
about how I showed up in circumstances
Mhm.
that, like, I need to come to terms with?
Mhm.
Like, and there's something where I'm like, I'd rather feel the grief now
Yeah.
than later.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, but I'm like, no, I
Well, you
feel like
want
there's,
redemption now.
I want redemption now. I want
Mhm.
redemption in this space. I want not only redemption in what it can do to me, but yes, reconciliation
Mhm.
in relationships.
Yeah.
That I can bring to it, bring love to it. And that's cool. We can also participate, right?
Mhm.
Like, we can create a lot of chaos, but we can also create a lot of repair and we can
healing.
and healing. We can engage that if we want to do this. And that's the really cool thing.
Yeah, I've made a list of people to make amends to as I've been processing
Yeah.
facing myself and imagining what it was like in their shoes. The more I'm like, oh, look I used to be really codependent. I tried to control all these people to do what I thought was right. I need to have conversations with them. That must have not felt good.
And again, if you look at it through the lens, if you try to look at this without the lens of grace, and you look at yourself through only the lens of shame and condemnation,
It'll kill you.
It'll only destroy you. So again, if you're going to begin this journey, you need to say, God, I really want to have your lens of grace. Give me your eyes of grace to help me come face to face with myself so that I can both imagine the impact, both the beautiful and the destructive that I've had in people's worlds, and then help me to begin to reconcile what I've done, forgive myself, and forgive others in the process. So
yeah, and get some feedback, because sometimes I've met with clients that think they're horrible humans.
Oh, totally.
And no one around them has thought that. They're like, no, you're not destroying anything.
No.
You know, like sometimes you need some feedback. Get some honest people around you, because I'd say you and Pizzi have there's been things that you're like, actually, that wasn't that bad. And then there's things that you're like, actually, it's been really difficult to be around you. And get community, because that's the only way. It's felt so safe to own more truth about myself, to own, oh, I'm actually scared here. And so I'm actually doing this weird behavior. I'm actually trying to stay safe. I'm trying to be in control. When we can just own those things with people around us, it feels so refreshing when they are also owning all that stuff. So there's zero judgment.
Yeah.
Like with you and Pizzi, when I own a new part of my behavior, you guys are like, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
We're all learning. And how beautiful that you owned another piece.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got to have this conversation. Something I'm passionate about. So
don't hate yourself. That doesn't fix anything. The goal is to let go of judgment towards yourself and others.
Yeah. Any last words? If you want to know more about us, you can go to justinandabby.com. That's abi.com. And if you haven't subscribed to YouTube yet,
come watch us.
Come hang out.
Yeah.
Come hang out on the couch with us.
Yeah.
We're going to chat it up on YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, hit the bell button so you can get notified every time a new episode comes out.
Yep.
I like you people.
Aw, me too.
Bye now.